listener production.
Hi, Chris Spyrou with you. Welcome to The Briefing. It's the first week back at work for many of us, and while our summer glows are fading and some of us are getting tired of wishing everyone a happy new year, others are just plain old tired. And the solution could be in fixing your sleep cycle.
I always say look at dogs before they go to sleep. They'll go round and round in circles, lie down and do a huge sigh. That's them changing their physical state because they're ready for sleep. So I always recommend we do that as well.
That deep dive is coming up in the second half of this episode. First though, let's get into the headlines with Helen Smith. It's Wednesday the 7th of January.
Morning, Chris. Millions of Australians are being told to be on high alert today as heatwave conditions not seen since the devastating black summer bushfires begin to take hold. Temperatures are set to soar across our southeastern states, with South Australia and Victoria first in line, where temps are forecasted between 40 and 47 degrees. Both Adelaide and Melbourne are tipped to reach 42 today, as state authorities activate additional support for vulnerable and isolated residents and introduce total fire bans in parts.
The heat is then expected to move into the ACT and New South Wales into the weekend, with Canberra expected to peak at 42 degrees on Friday and parts of Sydney to hit the low 40s on Saturday on the heatwave's final day. Severe and extreme heat warnings are also in place in Tasmania until Friday.
And Aussies in those states are being urged to check in on vulnerable, young and older people and to never leave children or pets alone in the car and to
drink plenty of water, stay indoors if you can, particularly during the peak hours between 11 and 3. And if you do have to go outside, wear light, cool clothing and remember to slop and slap.
That's the president of the Royal Australian College of GPs, Dr. Michael Wright there, speaking to Listener Newsroom.
Meantime, flood warnings and watch areas are active in several parts of North Queensland as a possible tropical cyclone is threatening to inundate already saturated areas. It comes as the federal and state governments yesterday pledged nearly $40 million in funding to support communities and farmers devastated by the floods.
It's been tough for all of the hundreds of thousands of people who live across these 13 shires, but I think especially tough for farming families right now as they count the cost of another natural disaster so soon after the flooding that we saw in 2019. A lot of people still getting back on their feet, restocking after the devastation of 2019. So our hearts go out to everyone.
That's Treasurer Jim Chalmers speaking there. It's believed more than 20,000 cattle are dead or missing in floodwaters, with damage caused to around 800 kilometres of fencing, while some towns have been completely cut off as roads remain swamped.
Overseas now, Venezuelan opposition leader Maria Corina Machado has vowed to return to the country as soon as possible, giving her first interview since the capture of Nicolas Maduro. Machado, who's reportedly been in hiding for more than a year, told Fox News from an undisclosed location that her movement was ready to win a free election and praised Donald Trump for overthrowing Maduro.
January 3rd will go down in history as the day justice defeated a tyranny. It's a milestone, and it's not only huge for the Venezuelan people and our future, I think it's a huge step for humanity, for freedom and human dignity.
She also revealed that she hasn't spoken to Trump since receiving her Nobel Peace Prize in Norway last October, and it comes as many expected Machado to take power after Maduro's detention, but instead Trump sidelined her and gave his backing to Maduro's former Vice President Delcy Rodriguez, who was sworn in to lead the country this week.
And following Maduro's taking, there's also been a crackdown on journalists in Venezuela and members of the public celebrating his toppling. At least 14 members of the press detained were employed by foreign news organisations, with a union representing media workers in Venezuela confirming all were released earlier this week, with one deported.
One community leader in Caracas, the country's capital, told the BBC that there were hooded men with guns patrolling and they were checking people's WhatsApp statuses, with residents saying people could not talk freely about what was happening. They're saying that there's a heavy police and military presence and pro-Maduro armed groups on the streets really cracking down, like you said there, Helen, on people that are publicly celebrating the fact that he's out of the country.
Staying overseas, and Swiss authorities say fire inspections hadn't been carried out in 5 years at the bar that was the scene of a deadly fire on New Year's. 40 people died and 116 others were injured in the blaze at a bar in Crans, Montana, believed to have been started by sparklers on top of champagne bottles that were too close to the ceiling.
While investigations are continuing into the compliance of the building, a ban on sparklers has now been introduced for venues in the municipality, with the mayor telling a news conference this morning he couldn't explain why the bar hadn't been inspected since 2019. He did say, though, that it should have been done annually, that he was profoundly sorry, and that the council owed it to the families of victims to accept all responsibility for their failure there. Local authorities will now bring in an external contractor to inspect and audit all 128 venues in the area. And look, Helen, this fire was one of the worst disasters in recent Swiss history, and it's led to an outpouring of grief in the country. It is expected that they will hold a national day of mourning next week.
And one of the world's biggest music festivals is inching a little closer to Australia. Tomorrowland, the European electronic dance music festival, will hold its first ever Asia edition in Thailand this December.
Yes, founded 20 years ago by Belgian brothers Manu and Mikkel Beers, the event's expected to host more than 50,000 attendees each day in the Thai beach town of Pattaya. Tickets are set to cost around 600 Australian dollars for a 3-day pass. And if you're keen to attend, pre-registration begins on the 8th of January, which is tomorrow, ladies and gentlemen.
Now, I think that is kind of a bargain price for 3
Bargain,
days.
she says.
In my opinion, I've been to a few festivals and they are very expensive. But as we are in the thick of festival season here in Australia, with Beyond the Valley and Lost Paradise just finishing up over the New Year's and Laneways also coming up, festivals are struggling here in Australia. We've spoken about this a lot on the podcast, but I'm thinking, could we see more Aussies travelling abroad for alternatives, like in this case with Tomorrowland?
Yeah, I mean, Tomorrowland runs, I think it's twice a year, and it is mostly in Europe. I think they've done some spin-offs somewhere else at one point, but everyone that I know that goes to Europe that's in one of the countries that's hosting Tomorrowland, they're there for Tomorrowland.
It's a massive event.
It'd be very interesting to see if Thailand can court a few more Aussies to go over. Helen, you sound very, very keen. I wonder if there's any briefers listening. If you're listening on Spotify, drop us a comment if you are going to be getting on that pre-registration list and heading off to Thailand for Tomorrowland. That is it for headlines for today. Thank you so much for listening. Up next is my deep dive. If you are feeling a little bit exhausted this morning and think maybe, just maybe it's time you sort out your sleep cycle, this deep dive is one you definitely want to stick around for. It is with our favourite brain expert, Alexis Fernandez-Preiksa. Stick around, that is coming up for you next. It's January the 7th, which means there's a pretty good chance you're back at work this week or are heading back in the next couple of days. And while you might have enjoyed some time in the sun and forgotten what day of the week it was, nothing snaps you out of holiday mode more than this horrendous sound. But what if your alarm went off and maybe, just maybe, you're okay with it? Well, one of the biggest levers here is sleep, specifically sleep hygiene. Joining me now is our resident brain expert and host of the podcast Do You Effing Mind, Alexis Fernandez-Preiksa. Alexis, welcome back to the briefing. And I feel like every time we have you on the podcast, it's when I need help with something and I frame it as something that's helping the listeners. So
it works. It's two-pronged approach. It's helping you mentally and also benefiting the listeners.
Correct. I'm hoping it benefits the listeners. So we'll start
Fingers
with
crossed.
the basics. Fingers crossed. Why is sleep important?
So really basically, there are certain processes that occur in your sleep that just do not occur when you are awake. And to put it really simply, but in a way that everyone can understand, imagine that it's where your brain gets rinsed and washed out. It's like literally your brain gets flushed through with cerebral spinal fluid and you get a clearing of literal debris within the brain. These are kind of plaques and little buildups that occur that if you have crazy sleep deprivation will get in the way of your focus, your concentration, putting thoughts together, your memory. Obviously, it's going to impact your mood, and all these things kind of gets like recalibrated when you sleep. You also consolidate memory in your sleep. So if you're not getting sleep, that's like one of the first things to go is your short and retrieval memory kind of gets shot to pieces. So that is just one of the many things.
I feel like you're looking at me with like a lot of precision at the moment, Alexis.
Yeah. I'm like, all these things that you are experiencing right now is due to lack of sleep.
Well, I'm actually, no joke, coming at you at the moment with 1 whole hour of sleep last night. But I was in bed with hours in advance and I was just sitting there doing nothing and I was getting angry at myself, Alexis, for not being able to fall asleep. Talk me through what I can do to not fall into that trap over and over again.
Okay, so the first thing that I would recommend, if it's for that particular reason, this is different to insomnia. Insomnia is a whole nother kettle of fish, which you need to like work through with, medical professionals. However, if you have this deadline or like a flight that you have to catch and you're freaking out that you're not going to wake up in time or that I need to get the sleep or I'm not going to be alert, then what I recommend you do is do things that are going to gently distract you. Focusing too much on having to fall asleep is going to make you more and more alert because it's going to trigger different stresses. It's going to trigger when you're stressed, this adrenaline or a cortisol, it's a frustration. It's the opposite of what's going to help you wind down. So I always say to people, find something that's distractive, but not active. It's a passive distraction. The best thing would be something like an audiobook, something that's entertaining, a story, something that's a good hook. So I'm interested, but it's also, I'm not visually stimulated because visual stimulation will keep you awake. It actually it prevents your brain getting kind of washed through with, melatonin and things like that help you fall asleep. So yeah, an audiobook, a good podcast that's not going to make you too I used to listen to murder podcasts, but then it wouldn't help me fall asleep. So something that will help you fall asleep. That's a really, really good one. You need to be distracted so you can kind of slip into sleep without thinking, I need to sleep, because then it's not going to happen.
All right, very good. So that throws Helen Smith's recommendation of Brooklyn Nine-Nine out the window, which is great to know. We'll let her know. Do we still subscribe to this 8 hours of sleep a night rule? Is that still the gold standard of what we should be getting each night?
No, not necessarily. 8 is that's kind of the median. That's why 8 is the number that's thrown around a lot. But for some people, it's going to be a little bit less, and for some people, it will be more. There are people out there that just need 10, and it's not because you're lazy or it's not because whatever, you just need 10 and that's how you function. There are studies out there that say that women in general might need more sleep than men. But again, it is on a case-by-case basis. I personally function really well with 7 hours. 7.5 is the sweet spot for me. But you want to look at it as sleep cycles, because when your sleep cycle completely comes to an end, that is the best time that you want to be waking up. So there are even apps that can track when you fall asleep, and it can sense when you're in the best time to wake up, because you start to move around a little bit more and then the alarm goes off. You can have an alarm go off within a 30-minute window, and that's what I really recommend if you're someone that really struggles to feel alert in the morning. But yeah, think 7 to 10 hours is kind of, most adults will fit into that window.
All right, very good to know. Now, something that I know you now know all too well, being a mother of 2 of twins, disrupted sleep. How do you manage disrupted sleep?
Yeah, so disrupted sleep, especially when there's literally nothing you can do about it, one of the best things that I recommend is nap whenever possible, because disrupted sleep, you're getting a sleep debt. You're having everything that I said that occurs in your sleep, you're having a lack of that occurring. So, of course, it's going to affect your memory. And then when all these things are affected, you feel really bad, you're really moody, you're on edge, you're irritable. So naps are a really good way to kind of try and mend a little bit of the damage that was done throughout the night. So if you're a parent, when they say sleep with the baby sleeps, that's kind of, yes, but it's also annoying when they say that, but it's kind of sleep whenever you can. If it's a 30-minute nap, do it. If you have an opportunity to take 3 short naps throughout the day, do it, because anything that will help recover that sleep debt is going to be beneficial to your brain.
Now, the last time we spoke, we were talking about screen time. We were talking about raw dogging certain activities in life in that tech sense. One of the things you mentioned is, this idea of the phone being very addictive and how it can disrupt our sleeping patterns and things like that. What's best practice when it comes to sleep hygiene or trying to formulate habits? Because a lot of us now, it's 2026, we are in this era of health and good sleep.
We are.
Yeah.
And more of a slow life. I think we're leaning into slowing down a bit.
Yes, I embrace it. Where does the phone fall into all of this? So obviously we can use it to play an audiobook.
Yep. Yes.
But we're not watching YouTube.
No.
We're not watching Brooklyn Nine-Nine.
No. Well, look, there are some people that can put on, and this is why it's case-by-case basis. Some people can fall asleep to a TV blaring, all of that. That's fine. But if you're someone that actually has sleep troubles and problems falling asleep, then I would say 0 screens whatsoever, no light coming into the eyes. If you can't follow, like if you want to read a book, have a backlit book. Screens are bad because it's light going directly into your eyes. But if you have a little lamp behind your head illuminating a book, that's fine. So think about what is going to stimulate my brain and then eliminate that. I say ideally no social media whatsoever, nothing where it's active scrolling or anything like that for minimum an hour before bed. Ideally an hour and a half, 2 hours before bed. This is for people that suffer, with falling asleep. But your sleep hygiene isn't just before bed. Your sleep hygiene is also in the morning. How you wake up and how well you wake up determines how you wind down at night. It's all got to do with your circadian rhythm. So when you talk about sleep hygiene, it's not just the tail end of the day. You really want to get a nice clean top end of the day as well. So you want to think, I want to wake up without hitting my snooze, because that kind of screws up your cycle a little bit, your sleep cycle. So when I wake up, I'm up. I want to feel alert. Ideally, don't have your first coffee. Ideally, after 30 minutes or an hour after waking up, unless you are going to exercise, because then caffeine operates differently. So if you're going to get up and train, you can have a coffee because it's a good pre-workout. The reason for that is because, well, A, coffee is more effective after you've been awake for a little bit, and it actually doesn't work as well if it's immediately out of bed. And B, because you want to allow your body to do the job of waking yourself up naturally, right? And then you're going to find that you fall asleep better at the end of the day.
Oh, I love how I did not know half of those things. Thank you so much for sharing that. I do want to bring it back to the tail end, though, the trying to fall asleep part, just for one more moment. I have two more questions for you, Alexis. What are your thoughts, asking for a friend, what are your thoughts on guided meditation apps or healing frequencies that play for 9 or so hours? Just asking for a friend.
The healing frequencies are going to do you well, Chris, okay? No, they're great. Honestly, guided meditations, healing frequencies, they're all really good because they actually change your state. They get you more relaxed. They change the state. Like you go into, your brain waves actually change. If you're in like these high frequency brain waves, it actually helps you calm down into slower, longer brain waves, which then help you dip into a sleep. Guided meditations are really, really, really good because a lot of people, they struggle to meditate because they're too wired. They're too, whereas another voice kind of guiding them, it always brings you back. So I highly recommend a guided meditation. Unless you're a seasoned meditator, go guided. It really helps. And then, the healing frequencies, definitely. Also things like breath work, guided breath work, stuff to help you, wind down. I always say, like, change your state to change your mental, like your physical state to change your mind. So a few deep sighs is also a really good way to so if you're going to meditate or have some healing frequencies, try a few kind of intentional sighs, and that actually will relax you. I always say, look at dogs before they go to sleep. They'll go round and round in circles, lie down and do a huge sigh. That's them changing their physical state because they're ready for sleep. So I always recommend we do that as well. And you'd be amazed that you notice the difference and you actually start to wind down. So all that kind of stuff, healing frequencies, meditations, yes.
Well, excellent advice as always, Alexis. Thank you so much for joining us again on The Briefing.
Thank you for having me.
That was neuroscience expert and host of Do You Effing Mind, Alexis Fernandez-Preiksa, speaking with me there. And that is it for this episode of The Briefing. If you enjoyed this chat or you learned something new or you plan on going home tonight and letting out a deep sigh just like a dog before trying to fall asleep, do leave us a review or get in touch in our DMs at The Briefing Podcast on Instagram. I absolutely want to hear from you on this one. I'm Chris Spyrou. I'll catch you next time.